Hello, this is Stephen Adams with Yellowstone Divide Trail System and Atomic City Trails, here with the To Hell and Back Scouting Report. This is the ride that takes you out across the desert to the east and to Craters of the Moon, through Craters of the Moon for a section, and it's just north of Blackfoot, Idaho. This is leaving Atomic City. One thing that's different about these rides from the other two events so far, the Cedar Butte and the Craters of the Moon, is that these are actual trails. These are not roads like we had there for the majority of those rides. These are actual trails. They're a little more bumpy, a little more adventurous. This is the kind of riding that I enjoy, more exploratory and just out seeing stuff that a lot of people don't see. So this again is heading, right now it's kind of southeast. Threw in some pictures. I'm hoping that the smoke is not around when we do this event. There's a lot of smoke coming down from Canada, I guess. This is a cave that's just northeast of Atomic City. It's before you cross the Arco Highway. And here now it looks like these are photos that are just before you cross the Arco Highway. This time of year the flowers were really in bloom. We thought we would see some last ride. We saw a couple, but now they're really in bloom. So lots of flowers. I've got some more pictures of flowers later on as well. That was one of my favorite things from this ride. This little guy was out and about that morning. Was a little closer than what it looks on the cell phone, but it was a lot of fun to just watch him, and he kind of just wanted to watch me for a little while too. So I started to drive off, and then he scampered away. But that was a highlight of the ride for me. That was really nice view. A lot of this trail is a service access to this telephone line, so I thought I'd throw this one in there. There's a lot of land out here in its areas most people haven't been or seen, but this is a pretty good trail. It's a little better on a side-by-side than on a four-wheeler. You can see that middle kind of semi-rut there is for the four-wheeler tires, the shorter wheelbase, and you're kind of riding at an angle. You switch every once in a while so you can wear out different sides of your back. But through this in there, you'll see a lot of these watering areas for cattle. This is an active grazing area, as is most of the BLM land out there. Pretty simple stuff. Some people like and enjoy it. I've seen enough of it that it's not that entertaining for me, but you'll see quite a few of those watering stations. This is about as steep as it gets on this ride. It's a very simple ride as far as elevation goes. When you get to the Craters of the Moon, I'm sorry, not Craters of the Moon, but the Hells Half Acre, there is some up and down, but nothing like technical steep. It's just a nice, easy up and down. Nice views of the Twin Buttes, the whole ride. Really kind of a vast, pretty landscape, especially if it's still green. This is one of the trails that's a little harder to see. There are tire lines here, and it is definitely a trail, but this is part of the access from Arco Highway heading out east into the desert. This in there just because I found this interesting. The fences that we saw when we went over to Craters of the Moon, there were several fence crossings, and they were really easy gates to handle. The gates on this one were not that way. You'll need help, usually two people. I struggled on a couple of them to get them to shut. It's just interesting how the different leases on the grazing rights handle those fences, and how some keep them up in really good repair and some just don't. There were several of the don'ts on this ride. So here we're actually in Craters of the Moon here, just kind of showing you what some of the trails look like in there. Or it's just one trail that is on this recommended path. There are other trails up there that can be driven as well, but it's really just an enjoyable ride. It's just something different. People don't normally get to ride through the lava flows like this. When we went to Craters of the Moon, we were just able to ride alongside of them, and in this ride, you actually get to ride right through the lava flows. This is one of the sections nearby the lava flows. You'll notice in a lot of these I'm driving a little slower than I am in some of my other examples that I've shown in scouting videos. It's just because there's some bumpy ground here and you just kind of need to take it a little slower, and you got to take into account that I'm driving with one hand holding my phone with the other hand, so sometimes I go even slower than might be necessary. Here's another section of video within the craters. I'm sorry, I keep saying craters of the moon. This is the Hells Half Acre. That's a really kind of a cool flow there on the left. Lots of interesting textures on that lava. One thing I'm going to recommend when you do this ride is that this is just a nice turnaround spot if you're going to take it easy for the day. If you leave at 10, you'll probably be in here around noon. It's a nice place to pick your favorite spot and have your lunch and enjoy the lava flows. There are some alternate routes that I'll discuss on Saturday, but if you're more of an aggressive rider and you're going to cover ground a little bit more quickly, you can actually ride all the way into Shelley, Idaho, or into Firth. Shelley I think is a little easier, and you can pick up some gas, eat lunch in there at a restaurant if you prefer. There are a lot of options off of this ride. One thing I learned from the Craters of the Moon suggested route is that a lot of people don't want to go that far, and it's a little too much for some folks. So I'm not going to make that part of the suggested route, but that is definitely something that can be done on variations of this ride. I haven't scouted that all the way through, but I did scout the other side of it coming from Shelley, and there appears to be pretty good access. Something I want to try out one of these days. I didn't have time to do it this Saturday on the scouting trip, but there are also several, if you look at the Onyx Trails map, you'll see several green trails, meaning that they're supposedly verified as trails that you can ride that go up north from here, and there's a lot of scouting that could be done, and some different paths that could be taken through Hells Half Acre. But just this one trail that is on this suggested route is a really fun ride and a really neat thing to take a look at. One thing I like about these trails we have in Atomic City, well, this isn't from Atomic City, is that they're just unique. You just don't see things like this very often in other places. If you're used to mountain riding, you'll have a very different and very enjoyable experience here. I like mountain riding as well, but I really love these desert rides. Decided to include more of my videos, and I'm realizing that with more video I run out of things to say, but that's okay. I'll just let the video show you kind of what you're coming at. You know, I've debated showing a lot of these videos because it doesn't really do justice to the ride sometimes, but I do like giving people as true a picture as I can of the trails that we're going to be riding and what they're getting into, so that it's not a total surprise for them, or they're just, I make sure I'm representing what I'm trying to show you properly. Sometimes the visual allows for that. Some really pretty flowers there, right there in the Hells Half Acre. That you couldn't really see. I was trying to show you all the farmland that's out there on the horizon as you come out of Hells Half Acre. Some of the trails are a little better, even with a four-wheeler. This one was a pretty smooth ride. But there's plenty of time to take these slow. I think the final mileage on this one was about 44 miles. That means 10 miles an hour is about all you're going to need to do to make it a pretty enjoyable day. I thought this one would be important to show you. This is coming back, and it's a pretty rocky road. You can't really see it too well, but you look to the right, that's actually a barbed wire fence. And I'm driving here with one hand, so I'm going really slow because I don't want a rock to pop my tire to the right and throw me into that barbed wire fence. So if you've been riding a while, you understand how ruts or rocks can catch your tire and just kind of throw you one direction or the other. So I would be careful on that section of the trail. Now, right before you get to the edge of that, you actually go through an open area to the north and then skirt along the other side of that fence that you just saw on the left. And this keeps you on the public access that will allow you to exit. It's a long story, but that's a state-owned piece on the left, and the gate there is locked, and they won't require that to be public access like the BLM. So this is skirting on the BLM on that trail, and then you cut from this corner of that fence over pretty much to the Arco Highway, returning back. This is across the Arco Highway now. We're heading back into Atomic City. That's that small butte right there, just south of Atomic City. This is the trail just cresting the last ridge, and you can see Atomic City there on the horizon. Kind of see the trail as it winds back into town. This is part of the trail that goes more of a south to north towards the Twin Buttes, and it's an alternate route that I'm going to cover when we have our activity, but I didn't want to put it on the recommended route because it will extend the route probably about 40 minutes to an hour if you're taking it easy. But it's a really pretty drive, heading up right onto the border of the INL and then over to the east and then down another trail that brings you back down to the main trail to Hells Half Acre. So I wanted to show it to you, and we'll talk about it at the event. But this is something that I enjoyed the ride a lot, and hopefully some of you will want to take that route. Thanks for taking the time to watch this.